The Outlast series is hardly short of terrifying villains throughout the series, and the Outlast trials is no different, with the biggest example of that being the puppet ventriloquist Mother Gooseberry. And in this video, we wanted to do a much more focused explanation of who she is exactly, and what her backstory was before becoming the main enemy in Grind the Bad Apples and Cleanse the Orphans trials in the Murkoff-Lathe program. So let's get into it. The daughter of a dentist, Phyllis Futterman, lived with her father in Philadelphia. It's described within the Murkoff documents that Phyllis's mother was not in her life anymore, and young Phyllis worked as an assistant to her father, often using puppets as a way to distract children patients during their drilling or surgery. As a child, Phyllis loved musical theatre and taxidermy and was widely appreciated, along with her father, by the local community. In fact, due to this popularity, the Futtermans got their own locally broadcasted television program called the Mother Gooseberry Hour, which aired in 1951. However, tragically for Phyllis, as her father and her only real parent would die shortly after. It's noted that Phyllis began suffering from hysteria and dissociation after her father's death. And to make this already sad story even weirder, it's also said that Mr. Futterman's body was never discovered, a mild suggestion that Phyllis might have been responsible at a young age. Regardless, the tone of Mother Gooseberry Hour shifted drastically after Mr. Futterman's death, and Phyllis began to condition her adolescent audience through classical applications of abuse and praise. And since Phyllis was known to be so charismatic, her young audience became almost cult-like, engaging in immoral behaviour, drug use, and even other crimes, such as larceny and assault. In 1955, the Philadelphia police raided the TV studio that contained the set to the Mother Gooseberry Hour on charges of kidnapping and racketeering. Phyllis was said to have fled underground into the puppetry tunnels beneath the set, even using a drill to kill 2 police officers and injure 5 others before eventually being apprehended. She would eventually be charged with conspiracy to commit murder, kidnapping, and racketeering. The disgraced television host, known to her young audience as Mother Gooseberry, would regularly use her television platform and mail-order dental drop business to hook an entire generation of children on narcotics, violence, theft, and in some cases even murder. The police captain in charge of the raid of Futterland Studios described the set as the most grotesque architectural perversion since H.H. Holmes' Chicago murder castle. H.H. Holmes was a real serial killer in Chicago during the later period of the 1800s, often using moving walls and secret rooms to confuse victims within his hotel that he could eventually kill. Phyllis Futterman was later sentenced to life in prison at Holmesburg Penitentiary. After reading numerous news articles about the disgraced television host, Clyde Perry felt that she could be an appropriate candidate for the Lathe program that Murkoff was creating under the supervision of Dr. Easterman. When Perry went to meet with Phyllis, he noted that while she had only been in prison for a year at this point, she was near unrecognizable compared to her archive photos and mugshots. It turns out that Phyllis, along with the majority of other inmates, had actually been subject to dermatological experiments that took place under the supervision of a Dr. Kliegman, which, if you are unaware, was an actual thing that happened at Holmesburg in real life, where inmates were used to test commercial skin products which led to severe scarring. And it was no different for Phyllis Futterman, as she had been exposed to carbonic acid, dioxin, and grafts of infected corpse flesh. However, Clyde did state that despite her horrendous appearance, she was in remarkable physical health. Perry viewed Phyllis as being highly charismatic and very lucid during their interview. However, she did show signs of dissociative identity disorder, regularly rotating between different personalities. The first off, which was herself, but would alternate with her television persona, Mother Gooseberry, a childlike version of herself when she was approximately 14 years old. The second personality was of a Dr. A. Futterman, her deceased father. She fashioned a hand puppet from the scavenged cafeteria and workhouse scraps, which Perry described as a remarkable mechanical aptitude. The puppet contained her Dr. Futterman personality, which was abusive and extremely violent. However, Perry described him as funny and even went as far to saying he liked the second persona. Both personalities would regularly lapse into murderous rage fits, but the Mother Gooseberry personality was so remarkably charismatic that despite her ragged appearance, she actually had relations with at least 2 prison guards, with many of the staff and prisoners alike falling under her sway. Phyllis expressed interest in self-improvement and scientific advancement, even stating she would like a change of scenery to Perry. And not long after the interview, Perry would go on to recommend Phyllis, or better known as Mother Gooseberry, to be a reagent in Project Lathe. Phyllis Futterman would become one of the experimental populations during the first iteration of Project Lathe in 1956. This group of reagents would go on to be considered by Murkoff as failures. This is due to the first generation of reagents consisting primarily of mentally ill patients of asylums or the clinically ill, with the biggest supply of reagents comes from Mount Massive Hospital, with the same seen in Outlast 1. Phyllis in particular was seen as already having a complex personality filled with trauma and pain, and since Murkoff was attempting to create trauma and pain, she and many of the other reagents were considered to be unfit reagents for the program. But as Dr. Easterman was planning his necessary changes for the second iteration of the Lathe program, he figured that instead of disposing of the previous generation of reagents, he could instead use them to create more deadly trial environment to better test the new generation of reagents. Phyllis was chosen to become a prime asset, a reagent that is recognized as an important person within the experimental population of which Murkoff will create a new facility that will emulate their former lifestyles, allowing Mother Gooseberry to have her own amusement park called Futterland in the Grind the Bad Apples facility, as well as running the orphanage in the Cleanse the Orphans facility, allowing Phyllis Futterman to unleash both the personalities of Mother Gooseberry and Dr. A. Futterman onto the newer generation of reagents, which would then help Murkoff better create the secret agent that he had been seeking this entire time. But regardless, that is a little bit of a character breakdown on the prime asset of Outlast Trials, Mother Gooseberry. Please let me know in the comments down below if I missed anything, and also write drill in the comments to let us know you got to the end. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, remember to like the video and subscribe for more content in the future. We also did a video on the other prime asset within the current state of Outlast Trials, Leland Coyle. If you haven't already, be sure to go and watch the video to learn all about him. Until next time, peace.